Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to today's webinar, the next generation account-based sale and sales engagement models. They aren't what you think. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. This is an interactive webinar and we'd love for you to join in the conversation. So please use the chat feature to enter your questions for our presenters at any time throughout the presentation. And then lastly, we'll be sharing the slide deck following the webinar. All right, without further ado, Scott, I sharing the presentation here. You have that one?
Okay. There we go.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so today's presenters are Jonathan Spier, CEO at Rev, and Scott Logan, VP of Marketing at Kronologic. Jonathan, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you to introduce yourself, please.
Hey, thanks. Really glad to be here, and thanks for having me. So my background in brief is technology. I've been a part of numerous tech startups from founder stage all the way up to IPO and beyond. And I've had the great fortune to be able to do a lot of sales and B2B sales along the way. When I met Scott here, I could see right away we had common interests because we both wrestled with every piece of the sales process at various times. And it's been exciting watching over the last bunch of years how much new technology has become available to make us more efficient in all of our selling activities. I'm really excited to be here today to share what we're up to at Rev and how it works with what y'all are doing at Kronologic.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I lead marketing at Kronologic. I've had about 8 years leading marketing teams in the customer service software space, and then the last 4-ish years have been in the sales engagement software space, and have seen quite the evolution of tactics and solutions that we've been using, and as the challenges and world evolves, we've tried to evolve with it. So we'll go into a lot of that here as we move through the presentation. So I think, Abby, are we going to start off with a poll here?
Yes, let's go ahead and launch our poll. So hopefully you can all see this on your screen now. And the question is, how do you identify the companies on your outbound prospecting list? We'll give everyone a minute or so to complete this. All right, see some answers coming in.
And I think in general, we've seen a mixture of this. I know that in my experience, it's even been a joint sales marketing effort as of late, where I've been in other scenarios, sales leadership hands down, and that is it. That's the list you go after. And we try and create marketing campaigns around it. I'm sure, Jonathan, you've seen a wide variety of things too.
Oh, for sure. But it's always one of the big questions, what we're here to talk about. But unfortunately, as a panelist, I'm not allowed to vote.
Yeah, mine would be marketing and sales leadership create. So those are the two that I would choose. What do we have, Abby?
All right, let's close this out. So it looks like a good mix of marketing creates the list, sales leadership creates the list, reps create the list. They're about tied. And then we had a couple people, looks like other was the selection there. So pretty neck and neck for the most part. Is that surprising to you guys?
Not really. I think that more teams are collaborating there in general, which is good, but we're going to go into some details as to how to do that in a better way. So Jonathan, can you kick us off here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a surprise at all to me that those techniques are sort of spread around on the different functions, because to be perfectly frank, there hasn't been a great owner and there hasn't been a great process. And one of the things we're here to talk about today is what we call the first mile problem. And we've gotten so much better at managing every step of our sales funnel over the last 25 years. We're better at engagement. We're better at monitoring deals in the pipeline and staying organized and processing them, and even after the sale, re-engagement with customers. But what we talk about with the first mile problem is that if you're walking in the wrong direction, every single mile you take, every single step you take is actually wasted. And unfortunately, because of what we're talking about with regard to how people identify outbounds, a lot of the time, unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. There's a bit of randomness there, where if you leave it up to each individual selling rep or each individual SDR, depending on how marketing creates their lists, it can be a little scattershot, and that is a problem that we're seeing a lot in the industry now. And I think it's something that's ripe for change.
So there's been a bit of evolution as we go through, how demand gen and ABM has come about. ABM is kind of the essence of selecting your account. It was invented back in '93 as a sales technique that was published and kind of molded into just, hey, select your accounts and then have, a field marketing presence, have a column approach. ABC, always be closing type of thing. And then the early 2000s, marketing starts to get involved a little bit. We're being reactive to how people respond to marketing campaigns. Email marketing comes about, where you have nurture streams and marketing automation platforms. And then all of a sudden, the two worlds collide a little bit, where the new technology is combined with like the new version of ABM and how to go about them. There's more tactics that you can use, and then all of a sudden tech fully enters the scene in 2014, and there's actual platforms specifically for this. I'm sure a lot of the folks on the call have experienced this evolution, or at least certain sections of it. And so we leave that platform off at the origin, where Topo takes up and says, all right, this is one of the leading sales consultant companies, analysts, who was just recently this last year bought by Gartner. And they are showing how we all felt in the conferences. If you ever went to a marketing conference, where you hear about ABM and you're like, cool, and then all of a sudden you hear some case studies of some really advanced companies doing it, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're behind the game. And then by 2017, most folks in most B2B companies are doing some form of coordinating the accounts that sales is going after with the marketing efforts. And it's no longer sales has their target list, we're driving demand in marketing, and we're just driving pipeline very siloed. So I think now, beyond 2017, it's no longer siloed, we're really just bringing it all together. And ABM platforms coming to light here is really a next step in this evolution, where demand-based and 6th Sense are two of the now dominant ones. Lattice Engines was one of the very beginning ones. They're still around, of course, but I think that 6th Sense and demand-based really have a really strong hold here, where they are saying, hey, this is what it means. It means there's intent data. There's website activity that you may not know about. There's when you combine that with your own campaign data, you can now score these accounts. Though what we're finding is that intent is a one-sided story. Now, it's incredibly important, and the orchestration of this integration to other platforms is important. But what we're finding is that it's not just about intent out there. And it's because you want to make sure that you're really selecting the right accounts. Just because a company is showing interest doesn't mean that they're a great customer for you. They're just showing a lot of interest. There were two companies that started out in the early teens, FlipTop and Sales Predict, that saw this right away, even before the intent engines were built, and said, hey, why don't we just model what your basically best customer is, and those customers that grow the fastest, and let's identify those exographic touch points and data points that tell you things that you couldn't see. You can't see from just a spreadsheet or a D&B data download. And they were actually so successful that they were immediately not just used by these other companies, they were acquired by these companies. And I was actually in the sales cycle signing paperwork in 2016 with Sales Predict. And I went to turn the paperwork in, and literally that day they said, actually, eBay just bought us. And I was like, okay, great. Here's my contract. And they're like, no, as in, we no longer are allowed to sell our product. We're theirs. Same thing happened to FlipTop just months before. And what happened is now we're just back to, the old school way of selecting accounts, the Fortune 500 list, and the sales reps got instinct, or the reps using references and, oh, this company looks like this company. But what Jonathan here is going to go through is that that's not necessarily always the best way, because you could get people through this funnel and then marketing seems like everything is awesome. We're made in the shade. And then all of a sudden reps will burn time and burn sales cycles on accounts that probably weren't the best fit to begin with. That's easy to say and it's hard to explain. So we'll let the expert here, Jonathan, dive into the explanation to what I'm even talking about.
Thanks, Scott. You got it exactly right. And it was a fun part of our first conversation when we met, and you talked about your experience with those technologies back in 16, 17. What we see is it continues to be a problem. That first mile problem I was alluding to just a minute ago. It really starts with guesswork. And the reality is people are doing good work. Everyone's doing their best. If you give an SDR, like everyone's trying to make the match. Marketing will create an ICP, and they have a lot of good thought they apply into what's the ICP. Your best people, your best SDRs, your best sales reps probably know how to use that just in their own minds. But the reality is we're going after big markets. There's thousands of customers out there. And we also have big teams, and you're going to have newer reps. You're going to have people who don't all know how to just, on their own, sort of figure it out, who's a perfect prospect. And so unfortunately, because it then becomes gut instinct, or you buy lists and some of the names are going to be good and some aren't, it's just inconsistent. And what the funnel is all about is optimizing your conversion rate from one step to the next. And so, there's two problems that come from that. One is, you're spending effort on stuff that doesn't convert. In other words, an opportunity to really increase conversion. And second, almost the worst scenario is that people get into the funnel who really don't belong there. And we all know the old phrase, garbage in, garbage out. Unfortunately, that tends to not be true in our sales funnel. Garbage in, garbage tends to sit there, quarter after quarter, with someone saying they might close. Maybe they show just enough intent to kind of stay in the funnel, but that's an account that's really not worth the time that we put into them.
Hey, Jonathan, we spend a lot of time on marketing making sure there's no garbage in. So I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think I've ever sent through a garbage lead to the marketing funnel. I mean, it MQL, by the way, mind you. But no, I hear that still, in the last few years, where a sales rep will be telling us after the fact that I don't like that lead source, or I didn't like that show, or this seemed like it wasn't right. But on paper, you stare at it thinking they fit the ICP, they fit the firmographic requirements. I don't know how we could be sending over quality leads besides maybe a few that sneak through the filters, but it still seems to happen on a regular basis. I'm sure most of the people on the call are sales folks and are like, yeah, that's exactly what happens still. So
listen, I think
we still feel that pain today.
The effort and the thinking and everyone's doing all the right stuff with the tools they've had. And what we want to do is share a new tool and a new capability, because we think it can be better. And we think that match can be stronger. And there doesn't have to be a first mile problem for a lot of our companies. And if you advanced a slide, what we think the solution really looks like is being more systematic and having a tool and support to better identify and prioritize prospects. And that really has three components. The first is discovery. How do we find a brand new name who could be next? But that's very related to the idea of scoring, because historically we've now developed the capability. Over the last bunch of years, the tools you're talking about, in the ABM stack, in funnel tools, we've gotten better and better at knowing if a prospect is active with us. Once they become a lead, once they become an actual opportunity, and they're in the funnel, they're coming to our webinars, they're clicking on our site and viewing maybe third party buying information, we're better and better at scoring opportunities and leads. What's never existed before is the ability to score a prospect before they've ever taken a single step in your direction. To score them when they're just a name. And to do that with technology. Because again, your best people will have a sense for if they match the ICP, but does your averagest person know how to do that? Maybe not. And yes, I'm gonna say that averagest is a word, at least for today.
I think that connects the dots though in between what looks good on paper and what matches intent score. If you're even taking it to that level, like that's a decent level to take it to at that point. If you're able to create a joint score of intent and ICP, it's still really hard. You need really smart operations people to do that. But a lot of times we're just blindly going off of intent or just blindly going off of a selected list.
Oh, for sure. And the intent data is super valuable. I mean, we're super impressed by those companies and believe in intent data. But the reality is that not every single customer scores the same as a great prospect. Not everyone who shows intent is worth your time to engage. And so what this scoring is about is knowing, who to engage with, whether it's a brand new name, or if it's someone who shows intent, or if it's someone who's on a list that you bought, or is already on your in-house list. It's know more about them before you approach them. And that gets immediately to the routing, because based on what you learn about that, about a prospect in the prospect scoring step, changes who maybe ought to get that prospect in the first place. So the way we approach this, the sort of magic, if you will, at Rev that we've been popularizing and deploying with our customers is this idea of creating a new kind of ICP. Historically, when we talk about ICP, what we're talking about is PowerPoint. It's the marketing team putting their best thinking into what the ideal customer profile is, and it's a persona. What we're doing is using artificial intelligence to create an always-on mathematical model of your ICP. That we say it's not even an ICP anymore. We say it's an AICP, an AI customer profile. And the way we do that is by using our platform. Our customers can choose their ideal customers, maybe as few as 30, 20 customers, as many as hundreds. It could be their entire ABM or intent list. But when they choose that seed, if you will, we then build the model. It's always on, it's always up to date. And you can ask that model at any time, give me lookalikes, give me the next 100 prospects that we should talk to, or the next 1,000 prospects we should talk to, whether that's aimed at an SDR team wanting to do prospecting more effectively, or whether it's going towards marketing, or in a lot of cases, then coordinating and aiming those prospects differently. Your 5 stars should go to the SDR team, your 4 stars should go to marketing, and so on. That's really the approach. It begs a big question, which is how we do it. And Scott, you hit on a really key point earlier, which is that if all you have to work with is firmographics, then it gets really hard to do scoring. But there's a reason we focus in the past on lead scoring instead of prospect scoring. It's because when they're in the funnel, you start to collect more information about them. In the past, if you'd give an SDR the challenge, you'd say, go out and call on, industrial machinery. And they saw 2 companies like Cat and Deere. They're firmographic twins. Those companies are the same industry, they're the same basic size in revenue and the same basic size in employees. There's just nothing to grab onto to distinguish those 2 companies. And what we're doing, the way we build our mathematical models, our AICPs, is we're using exographics, which is information about how the companies actually execute their mission. It turns out, for example, that Cat tends to be a very early adopter of new technology, and Deere tends to be a late adopter, a mid-late adopter. Cat tends to adopt the cloud, Deere does not. Cat has a very low B2C focus, Deere has a much higher B2C focus relative to each other. Now, which one's a better prospect? It depends on what you're selling. If it's something brand new, cutting edge, blockchain, crypto, Caterpillar might be a better target. If you're selling an on-premise solution, I talked recently to an e-fax provider, someone replacing fax machines. Deere might be a better fit. The point is, this gives you something to grab onto. And what we're doing at Rev is building a library of these kinds of exographic lenses. We have over 500 different lenses like this that go into those models. So at all times, you just know more about your prospects, who the right prospects are, how to approach them, and you make better decisions with better exographic data.
Yeah. Can we take a time out and pull back the Wizard of Oz curtain and see some of the, or hear some of the exographic data points? I was like champing at the bit here to get to this slide so I could ask you this question.
Yeah, there's as I mentioned, we have over 500 different lenses that we talk about here, and it's things like early adopter, but it's also things like, are they invested in e-commerce? And it's amazing, the degree. That's a question of degree, because some customers a little bit invest or a lot. Things like compliance, data sensitivity. Do they invest heavily in legal issues? All those types of investments, it turns out, can be learned based on the company's own website, LinkedIn data, who they have on staff, what kind of hiring they're doing, and technographic type signals. If I give you an example of how those kinds of things have been built over the years, first of all, our company's been going for 7 years. We serve some of the absolute best of the best in the software and technology industries, customers like Zendesk and Splunk and Oracle and Adobe and others. But if I go into the way we've perfected this technology with them, something like an early adopter score is based on signals. It turns out that a company with a diverse group of ages on the executive team tends to be an earlier adopting company. If you think about that logically, it actually makes a little bit of sense that, if they have enough experience to be good evaluators and judges, but enough, younger, newer folks on an executive team, then they're open to new ideas. And that we have now proven mathematically over the years is just a more early adopting team than someone with all younger people or all more experienced people on the team. And that's one signal of many thousands we're using to generate these lenses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that last example of a more diverse leadership in the company, where the younger folks are bringing the cutting edge technology, and then the more experienced leadership team that's been around for a while have the confidence to say, yeah, that's a good risk to take, and that's fascinating to me. And then I actually have been on both sides of this John Deere Caterpillar scenario, where in the mid-teens, I was selling or marketing for a company that sold maybe half to 2/3 of the solutions were still on-prem contact center telephony solutions. And John Deere was one of the biggest customers. And now what we're selling is more cutting-edge sales enablement technology, and CAT is a customer. So I absolutely have seen this to be true. And we actually believe in this so much. We are a customer of yours. And when you popped this slide, I thought, wow, I 100% believe you. You don't even need to speak to it. I just get it. So this is super exciting to be able to have this, to be have access to if you want to go down that route, and if you don't want to go down that route yet because of whatever reasons, but you want to explore it, you certainly start to maybe look for some of those things. Another item I've used in the past, before even FlipTop and Sales Predictor were around, is a consultant agency that we spend heavy amount of money on, like in the 2010 timeframe, was they said, well, look at the number of widgets that are on the website. If there's 5 or more built-in applications, now maybe in today's world it'd have to be like 10 plus, because there's so many, that they are probably more of an early adopter, and you can use the same logic there. So that's fantastic. Thank you for these examples.
There's all kinds of stories like this. Amazon Web Services in the early days, a story floating around that they figured out their ideal customer is when a CIO has been on the job for less than a year. Presumably after a year, that CIO has already made their technology investments. That was just what they knew to target. And what we want to do is get the marketing teams or the sales dev leadership in position to operate at that level, to take the insight that would go on an ICP, but then put math around it so you can then match companies against it really instantly. Which is what exographics in our platform are all about.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Now to transition to the last mile problem. Now, the last mile of the lead, of course, here in this context, versus the first mile problem that we just addressed. There still is an issue, but you might not always see it. So actually, before we go to here, when we look at, now it's time for lead engagement. So let's just say you go with predictive modeling, you have some intent scoring and orchestration built in there, and then you push them down, the leads down the funnel. All of a sudden they are qualified enough with enough information for a sales team to use, go into the CRM, and now what? Abby, do you want to launch the poll on what you're doing as an organization today for the lead chasing component?
Okay, yes. Bear with me one moment here. Okay, should see it on your screen now. And the question is, how do you follow up with your leads? Is it a sales sequence of 9 to 15 steps over 14 days? Or maybe you're taking a more manual approach with lead lists, and there's also an option for other if you're doing something.
And the whole 9 to 15 steps over 14 days, that's just some best practices that have been thrown out there by folks like G2 and Outreach and SalesLoft and those core platforms that are available today. There's many more, of course, but that's really what that's referring to. And then some folks are still, using a manual CRM view to call down and reach out to them. Maybe your sequence is a little bit more unique, or you have something that is completely different. Certainly go ahead and chat it. We'd love to hear and read what you are doing. I've been a part of, obviously, in being at companies that sell sales sequencing, sales engagement platforms for the last several years, trying to work with the sales team as closely as I can from the demand gen side has been just a big focus on making sure that they always know on the sales side what your highest priorities are, mixed in with everybody's highest priorities. So that is an ongoing challenge, but something you have to manage. We'll dive into some new ways to do that. Do we have any results back yet, Abby?
Yeah, so sales sequences started out in the lead, and then manually lead lists, they were neck and neck as well. But it looks like sales sequences with the 9 to 15 steps over 14 days is our winner there.
Nice. Yeah. Not surprised there. That's probably good that most people are using that best practice, because it certainly is a lot better, especially for a junior rep, to go down that road than to just do what we used to do and have a view in the CRM up for them to, hopefully do what you need to do, and just have a list of tasks or something like that may not be as scientific. So this is basically after that CRM step, what it looks like in today's world. But as you can see, there's not this big triangle funnel of automation here that we saw on the marketing side. I mean, the marketing side can scale this entire funnel with just a handful of people building this. You have some folks building content, you have some advertising folks, an operations person to make sure all the platforms are connected and the filters are set right. But then it's still kind of manual. We do have the setup for these two platforms as the leaders. That's why I just chose them. And they do automate about 10 actions over 14 days, but only for that first connection. That's it. Even the email replies are automated or needing to be manual. They're not automated at this point. And you can even get someone on the phone. I've been an SDR in the past and a sales rep in the past before I moved into marketing. And you may, even listening to calls today, you get someone on the phone, they think that, you're someone else, or maybe they do know it's a random number they're picking up, and they say, yep, sounds good. Yeah, next Tuesday, fine. Yep, okay, bye. And they click, and then the rep doesn't have a meeting booked. They agreed to it. Now you got to turn back to email, and they're not responding to email. Now you're starting back from square one, and it's all manual to try and get that meeting on the calendar. You can hope that they open your email and book their own meeting and go through the 7 to 10 steps to book a meeting through a link-based scheduler, but it's still now a manual process for the prospect to do work for you for something that you want, not necessarily them at that point. And it's really, it can cause a lot of headaches. I don't know if Jonathan, you've ran teams or been part of leading teams that have run into this issue.
Oh, tons. Scott, it's we had talked about it earlier, and I was trying to think of an example. And the reality is, there isn't one. It just happens all the time. You have a phenomenal meeting. There's going to be follow up. You all agree to it, and then it just bogs down in that scheduling step.
Yeah, it really does. And it just is not a really good morale booster when marketing's sitting there hanging over your head. Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And the SDR leader saying, are you doing this? What are your SLAs at? Are you making enough calls? And the ROI could take a month on a very simple campaign because of this delay between the steps. And not to say that these tools and these processes are bad. We actually are an outreach customer ourselves, and we think that there's a time and a place for it. But the problem is as your first touch point, it can be challenging. I don't know if anyone else on the call has suffered through, trying to drive results this way, but we did a research with Heinz Marketing, a leading marketing agency that is well known in the CMO community. And we did some polling where we found 80% of technology buyers are most annoyed by being lead chased with calls and emails when booking a meeting. Like, they want the meeting and they're so annoyed with the lead chasing component. I know in times I've had to buy software, I want to buy software, and I have to fill out 5 forms and wait for an SDR to call me back. And sometimes it's the SDR from my 3rd, 4th, 5th choice that I think I want to go with that are the ones that are calling me back right away. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I know that I basically want to buy that platform, but I need to do due diligence, and it's difficult to just be at the mercy of that queue and the priorities within the business or vacation or what have you. We all have to have lives outside of work too. And this is causing 78% of marketers to have their biggest fear be the lack of or not enough follow-up when passing leads to sales. I mean, to even say lack of, like no follow-up is still a fear. It's kind of crazy. When even most people on this call are driving a lot of, using these platforms and trying to enable the SDRs as best you can. So we've created this calendar first methodology, the automated sending of calendar invites at scale using AI-based time negotiation to book revenue-focused meetings with no human intervention. Now, the secondary definition is you can do this manually. There's even been reps I've tried to bring over to this team who are very good seasoned reps, and they say, yeah, I've been actually doing that for years. It's awesome. You're telling me you can automate that now? Like, yep. And it's not to say you just load up a cold list. You actually just use the same criteria that you would use to send a meeting to or a lead to an SDR to book a meeting. This is just a much more effective first step. We'll give you this link here at the end of the deck as well when we send it out. But if you do want to do this manually, there is a blueprint here, just going to kronologic.ai/calendar first. So what does this look like? Well, let's say you're a cybersecurity platform and you just had a webinar and it discusses cybersecurity infrastructure. And that's much like we're talking today with a bunch of sales and marketing folks who are learning better ways to improve their world. IT people are trying to figure out how to make their network more secure. So we send out a timely and tailored invite right after the event happened, and we offer something valuable. We offer a security assessment, and we reference in our text and in an email following it, which you wouldn't see here, but the text for this goes along with the invite to say, hey, thanks for joining this webinar. You most likely, looking to, audit your infrastructure and plan for 2022. Do you have time on Tuesday for us to perform an audit for you and provide you additional information? I want to sell you anything. I want to buy you. I mean, eventually I do, but the value you're going to get from this meeting is very clear. Even if I don't buy from them, they're willing to do an audit and send me that information. And it's very timely because I'm doing an audit myself to plan for 2022. This approach we're finding is very effective And it basically replicates your best SDR in their first few calls, right when they start going after those leads from whatever it is you're following up with.
Scott,
Jonathan,
I've got a question though, if I could. I mean,
yeah.
so this is offering a time, but how do you know the person's even available at the time when you're sending that invite?
Yep. That gets brought up quite often, actually. And what you'll find is try doing calendar first on your own. Try doing this just within the next couple of meetings that you need to book today, tomorrow, whenever you get into that conversation in the next few days, and offer up a time in the next 2 to 5 days. And what we're finding with our customers is with our automation and tens of thousands of of meetings being booked, 80% or more in some cases, depending on the lead source of our of that first time proposed is actually being accepted when a meeting is accepted. So it's only about 15 to 20% of those meetings even need one back and forth. And then in our scenario, with it being automated, the AI actually interprets the intent and interprets what time it is that they're looking for. We'll check back on the rep's calendar and update the meeting invite, or the rep would do that themselves. But you'll find that when you do just propose a time, instead of saying, oh, what time works for you? Let's open our calendars. Have your calendar ready to go and say, does next Wednesday at 2 o'clock work? And this calendar first methodology truly is a methodology that has a very high success rate.
Terrific.
And so here's what we're looking at when it's all said and done. This is our own data on the left. We're finding that over the course of, for us, about 5,700 leads that we've qualified leads at this point, we're seeing that we're able to actually get an accepted meeting in 1.4 email, or not emails, but calendar invites sent over 4 days. And that's the accepted meeting, as opposed to what we're doing today, where you have, say, using the Agoji sequence, 15 steps in 14 days, just to get a connection with that person. That's not even to book the meeting. That's just to connect with them. And so we're not saying, leave the Agoji sequence behind. We call this calendar first because this should be the first thing that you do. And you can actually automate it at scale. And you're going to find yourself booking a lot more meetings a lot faster with a lot less effort when you just do this. And then for those folks who decline or no respond, that's when, but they're still a target account, you can throw them in your outreach sequence, which is much like we do. But you're just going to see huge multiples in your conversion rates and your pipeline generation with no extra SDRs, nothing else, just changing the way you approach your leads right out the gate.
Question for you, Jonathan, on this last screen here. I'm curious, are you part of a lot of these sequences? Are you seeing a lot of the sales emails and getting a lot of the sales calls every day as part of that? Is that something that's kind of second nature to you as well?
Abby, I'm lucky because I've been in my new role here at Rev for only 7 months. And that means I'm only in, 10,000 databases instead of 100,000, which I'm sure it'll be in another 5 months. So it's dozens, by noon every day. And, it occurs to me as you're talking that, I think the best salespeople, both on my team outbound, and when I'm approached, they look at it as building a relationship. And it's really easy, unfortunately, to slip in from, even if you start right, you start in the building a relationship side, it's easy to slip into something that feels more transactional. You feel like you're being sold. And that's a nice part of taking steps out. It actually keeps it so the rep is focused on the relationship. So yes, I do feel this all the time, and it feels very transactional all the time.
Yeah, you get the people who are going to say yes to an SDR on a phone call to say yes right away because they're interested, and you're able to hit them faster right at that moment of peak engagement, instead of the fastest an SDR can get to that step, to that lead in the queue after the event has happened, which could actually be in the next 2 to 3 days, as opposed to within the next hour, depending on how big the list is or how big the team is or who's out sick that day. And you get the no's who are going to say no out of the way right away as well, so you can move on to the next one. Or if they said no, but they're still a target account, you can just see how they replied. If it's because they're on vacation, then you can propose another time. If it's because they said there's something for budget, I'll bet you're trained on how to, overturn a budget objection as a sales rep. Now and now they responded, and now you have a back and forth started. You're going to engage with a lot more folks too, for better or worse. And then the ones who don't respond, which tends to be around the 40 to 50% mark, you can go and use this other sequence for. Yeah, and I also get, my email has gotten out of control. I'm trying to actually use more Slack than anything else moving forward, just because it's so hard to filter through all the emails and calls from, just being prospected to. I'd much rather just say yes or no right away. So let's see this in action. We do have a customer who uses this. Obviously, all of our customers use this at scale, but at scale, there's a large team of sellers, inside reps, and for 200 reps, they were able to book 800 meetings in 1 week. They said that would have taken them months to book that many meetings, and those meetings just populated on their calendars. And they were able to close millions of dollars worth of revenue within that quarter versus, taking maybe a quarter just to set up that many meetings. It just accelerated the sales cycle that much faster. You're like, well, that's not me. I got 6 reps, or I got 10 reps or 15 reps. Perfect. They actually had a smaller field team, and they were able to book 150 meetings in 1 month, more targeted account type versus the transactional existing relationship type that you see above there. So you can go ahead and listen to these examples as well from Pat. It's actually from a past webinar we did to kind of hear how they did it and get into the nitty gritty and what they thought of it. And here's what it looks like, and you can do this manually or with our solution, of course, just like you can with Rev. You can start looking at more exographic material, characteristics that you may find or discover, but then it's not scalable and you can't do it over time. And as your company grows and becomes more successful because of these tactics, you're going to need a way to automate this. So certainly you can reach out to either of us when you get to that point, or if you just want to talk to either of our reps. So for us, you can certainly just read the blueprint for yourself. It gives a step-by-step guide of how to do this for your team. If you want to try it out right now, if you want to just actually have a discussion about it with a rep, go ahead and do so. But please, try this out and make sure it's with the quality leads. And I think, Jonathan, you have a way to help people out too. That's, reach out, but we don't really need to sell to you. We'll still help you out another way.
We do. For us, we call it a jump start. And, folks often ask, this sounds amazing, but does it work on our customer set? And if you get in touch with us and you have, just 20 or 30 ideal customers in mind that represent your AICP, well, we can do a jump start. We'll show you what that market segment looks like as an AICP, including the exographics, and give a pretty good view of what we're up to and how it can help.
Yep. I actually do like that process. I always love going. One of the favorite things I like about going through the ABM or predictive modeling sales cycle is that you usually get a sampling of, hey, here's what your data should look like. And you quickly hand that list over to sales. You're like, go after these folks. We're looking at this. See if you can sell to these right now. Because if you can, we're going to go and buy something that can do a whole lot. So you do get some benefit from that. Not to, I'm just going to throw that out there, Jonathan. So please go fill that out. Have them do an assessment for you. You're going to like it, I think. Any other questions, Abby, that we have now that we're wrapping up?
Nope, I think we've covered them all throughout the presentation.
Fantastic. All right. Any closing words, Jonathan?
No, again, glad to be here and share what we're doing. I think it's a great fit, what we're doing the first mile and what you guys are doing with the last mile. So it's a fun chance to get to talk to folks and share what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for bringing some predictive modeling back to our world for us to take benefit of and make our funnels a little bit more streamlined. So Abby, can you take us home?
Sure. Just want to say thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, both Scott and Jonathan, for a great presentation. Really appreciate it. And have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.